"Hello, son. Can you help me with my load?" The elderly black woman turned to Marcus Johnson while he was trying to catch up with his flight, but if he waited to help her, he was going to miss it. The most important meeting of his career, possibly his life, and Marcus Johnson was about to watch it disappear if he ever chose to help this elderly black woman at the airport. She struggled with her luggage, an elderly black woman whose dignified appearance contrasted with how invisible she seemed to everyone rushing past. No one stopped. No one helped. No one saw her except Marcus. He wasn't supposed to stop. The practical choice was clear. The business choice was obvious. He had an interview to meet up with. Would he ignore this elderly woman and board the flight, or help her and risk the chance of meeting his flight and job interview? Would his decision change his life after knowing the true identity of this elderly black woman? Marcus Johnson was 34 years old, and in those years he had mastered the art of preparation. As an executive consultant, his career had been built on anticipating problems before they materialized. This morning was the culmination of years of his strategic career moves. He had an important interview. And the interview at Callaway Partners wasn't just another opportunity. It represented everything Marcus had been working toward since he graduated top of his class at Wharton. The position would catapult him into the upper echelons of his field, where fewer than 2% of executives looked like him. The salary would finally allow him to help his mother retire. The prestige would open doors that had remained firmly closed despite his impressive resume. Marcus had prepared for 3 months. He had studied the firm's entire portfolio, memorized their client list, and could recite their 5-year growth strategy verbatim. His new suit had been tailored precisely. His presentation had been rehearsed until he could deliver it in his sleep. The flight to Chicago had been booked with a 5-hour buffer before the interview. Enough time to account for typical delays, check into his hotel, review his notes one final time, and arrive 15 minutes early. Marcus Johnson never left anything to chance. But chance had other plans that day. In the 14 years since he'd entered the corporate world, Marcus had navigated an obstacle course that many of his white colleagues would never fully understand. There was the time he'd presented a comprehensive market analysis only to have his white colleague receive credit when the strategy proved successful. There was the client who insisted on speaking with someone more senior, despite Marcus being the most qualified person on the team. There was the executive who expressed surprise at his articulate presentation as though eloquence was unexpected. Atlanta International Airport was crowded that Tuesday morning. Marcus checked his watch still on schedule despite the taxi arriving 7 minutes late. The crisp white shirt beneath his charcoal suit was pristine, his leather briefcase organized with portfolio, presentation materials, and documents. His boarding pass was already downloaded, his pre-check status should streamline security, and his gate information was confirmed. The first disruption came at the security checkpoint. White passengers in business attire moved smoothly through the left lane. The TSA agent greeted them with professional courtesy, barely glancing at their documentation. When Marcus approached, the demeanor subtly shifted. "Sir, step over here, please. You've been randomly selected for additional screening." Marcus felt the familiar weight in his chest, that unique combination of frustration and resignation. His face revealed nothing. He'd perfected the art of neutrality in these situations, understanding that any display of emotion would only complicate matters. Through the corner of his eye, he noticed 3 more white executives passing through without additional scrutiny. One man's carry-on wasn't even inspected. Meanwhile, Marcus stood with arms extended as another agent methodically searched his belongings. His carefully packed briefcase was dismantled, folders removed, papers inspected. His laptop was swabbed for explosive residue. His shoes were removed and examined. His buffer time was being consumed by this random selection. 7 minutes became 15. 15 became 22. When the agents finally finished, Marcus maintained his professional demeanor, thanking them courteously despite the unnecessary delay. He gathered his belongings, restored order to his briefcase, and calculated the remaining time. Now he needed to hurry. His brisk walk through the crowded terminal pushed him past families and bustling shops. His mind was focused on a single objective: reach the gate before the doors closed. With his gate finally in sight, relief washed over him. He was going to make it. Despite everything the morning had thrown at him, he would still board that plane and make it to Chicago, with enough time to prepare for the interview that could change everything. But fate wasn't finished with Marcus Johnson yet. Just 30 yards from his gate, time seemed to slow as his eyes caught sight of her. In the chaotic flow of travelers, she stood out. Eleanor Winters was 78 years old, though she carried herself with the straight-backed poise of someone who had never allowed age to diminish her. Her silver hair was styled in an immaculate updo. Her attire simple but elegant with a pearl necklace. But what caught Marcus's attention wasn't her appearance. It was her situation. Her suitcase had toppled, spilling several items. As she attempted to gather her belongings, the stream of travelers simply flowed around her like water around a stone. The terminal staff just feet away actively assisted other passengers. A young gate agent was cheerfully helping a white family rearrange their carry-ons. Another staff member escorted an older white gentleman to priority boarding. Yet there stood Eleanor, clearly struggling, clearly in need of assistance, and completely overlooked. Eleanor approached the counter where a gate agent was organizing boarding passes. "Excuse me, could I trouble you for some assistance with my luggage?" she asked. The agent barely looked up. "You'll need to wait your turn, ma'am. I'm helping these passengers first." His dismissal was casual, almost routine. Eleanor gave a dignified nod as she stepped back. This wasn't new to her. Marcus felt the weight of a choice pressing down on him, heavier than his luggage, more significant than the interview waiting in Chicago. His watch told him he had exactly 8 minutes before they would close the doors to his flight. The practical choice was obvious, but Marcus was more than his ambitions, more than his career goals. With a deep sigh that contained 14 years of similar moments, Marcus adjusted his grip on his briefcase and changed direction, toward Eleanor. "Ma'am," he said gently, "may I help you with that?" When Eleanor looked up at him, there was no dramatic display of gratitude. Instead, there was recognition. "That's very kind of you, young man," she replied, her voice rich with southern warmth. As Marcus knelt to gather her belongings, a leather-bound journal, a vintage glasses case, a small silver pillbox, he noticed something unusual about Eleanor. Despite her age and being ignored by staff, there wasn't a trace of defeat in her demeanor. She stood waiting with patient certainty. "I'm Marcus," he offered. "Eleanor Winters," she replied. "I appreciate you seeing an old woman when no one else seemed to." The way she emphasized seeing resonated with Marcus. His flight was now on final call. The knot in his stomach tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. "That's my flight, too. Let me help you get there." As they walked together, Marcus adjusted his brisk pace to match Eleanor's measured steps. The final boarding call had already been announced. Eleanor must have sensed his concern. "Don't let me keep you, young man," she said softly. Marcus shook his head. "My mother raised me better than to leave a task half-finished." At the counter, the harsh reality became clear. The gate agent, who had been announcing final boarding for the past 10 minutes, suddenly developed selective blindness. Though he clearly saw them, he continued processing the boarding passes of other passengers. When he finally acknowledged them, it was with a dismissive glance. "Sir, boarding is complete." "You should have been here earlier." The words hung in the air like a slap, especially as a white businessman arrived late and was checked in without issue. Marcus stated calmly, "We've been here for several minutes waiting while you assisted others." The agent's expression hardened. "As I said, boarding is complete. I can put you on standby for the next flight." Behind them, a white couple arrived, and the agent's demeanor transformed into warmth. "Oh, you made it. Let me get you processed." 2 sets of rules applied at gate C16. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his tone professional but edged with determination. "You just told us boarding was complete, but you're still boarding passengers who arrived after we did." The agent didn't even look up. These passengers were already checked in and simply returning from the restroom. A lie. "That's not accurate," Marcus replied, calm but firm. The agent's expression shifted dangerously. "Sir, if you continue to be aggressive, I'll need to call security." That word again, aggressive, the verbal weapon used to silence black men who dared to advocate. Before Marcus could continue, he felt Eleanor's hand on his arm. "It's not worth it today, young man," she said softly. Her tone carried no surrender, only strategic wisdom. Marcus exhaled slowly, nodding. "When is the next flight to Chicago?" The agent consulted his computer. "The next flight departs in 5 hours at 3:45 p.m. Marcus would miss his interview. "We'll take it," he said simply. As they moved away, Eleanor studied his face. "You had an appointment in Chicago today, didn't you?" Marcus nodded. "A job interview, the kind that doesn't get rescheduled." Eleanor's expression reflected regret. I'm so sorry, Marcus. You didn't cost me anything, Marcus said sincerely. I made that choice, and I'd make it again. Marcus excused himself to make a call, stepping a short distance away. He explained the situation to Callaway Partners' assistant, offering to reschedule or conduct the interview virtually. The response was polite but firm. The partners' schedules were fully booked for weeks. The position needed to be filled immediately. They would proceed with candidates who could attend the scheduled time. Just like that, it was over. Months of preparation, years of planning, gone in a 90-second phone call. Eleanor saw his neutral expression and read the truth. They wouldn't reschedule, she said. Marcus nodded. It's all right. There will be other opportunities. Not like this one, Eleanor observed quietly. She didn't minimize his loss, but acknowledged it. Marcus felt seen in a way he rarely experienced outside his family. It was Callaway Partners, he admitted. Executive consultant position. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. Callaway. Arthur Callaway's firm. Something flickered in her features. Before Marcus could ask further, his phone buzzed with the formal rejection email. Eleanor watched as he read it. I truly am sorry, Marcus, she said softly. It seems I've inadvertently cost you dearly today. You didn't cost me anything, Miss Winters. Some opportunities come with too high a price, Marcus replied. Eleanor studied him. There aren't many like you left in this world. Character isn't what you display when it's convenient, but what you maintain when it's costly. They settled in for the 5-hour wait. Eleanor suggested finding somewhere more comfortable. Perhaps we might find something more comfortable in one of the restaurants. My treat. Marcus began to decline, but her warmth persuaded him. At the restaurant, the hostess led them to the worst table in the establishment, though prime tables by the window sat empty. Eleanor asked gently, Would you mind terribly if we requested different seating? I find it difficult to hear with all this commotion. Marcus recognized the familiar slight. Eleanor made her request politely. The hostess replied, Those tables are reserved for priority guests, though no signs marked them. Eleanor's posture shifted subtly. And what might qualify one for priority status in your establishment? The hostess flushed, retreating to check. Minutes later, they were reseated at a prime window table. You managed that beautifully, Marcus said. No confrontation, yet here we are with the best view. Eleanor smiled. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn which battles require artillery and which can be won with a well-placed question. Confrontation rarely changes hearts. Lasting change requires something more subtle. You mentioned earlier that you were familiar with Callaway Partners, Marcus said. Are you in business yourself, Miss Winters? Eleanor laughed. At my age, not actively, though there was a time. I entered the business world in 1965. Not the most welcoming environment for someone who looked like me. She spoke in generalities rather than specifics, but her understanding of corporate structures and boardrooms revealed deep executive experience. Marcus admired her poise and wisdom. As they finished their coffee, Eleanor reached across the table, touching Marcus's hand briefly. Thank you for indulging an old woman's company. It's been a long while since I've had such an honest conversation. There's a refreshing quality to your perspective. Marcus smiled. The pleasure was mine. Back at the terminal, the same patterns unfolded. White travelers receiving preferential treatment, others overlooked. Just 40 minutes before their rescheduled flight, an announcement cut through. The flight had been overbooked. At the counter, the gate agent barely looked at their passes. I'm showing you both on standby status, Marcus replied calmly. That's not possible. We were confirmed 5 hours ago. A white family of 4 arrived late, and the agent's demeanor transformed into warm accommodation. Of course, Mr. Smith, we'll make room. Excuse me, Marcus said firmly but respectfully. We've been waiting for hours. There's a clear pattern here, and I'd like to speak with a supervisor. Sir, I'm simply following protocol. If you continue being aggressive, I'll have to call security. That word again, aggressive. But Marcus had crossed some threshold. I'd like your name and your supervisor's contact information, he stated calmly. The agent's hand moved toward the phone. Eleanor touched his arm. Perhaps I should make a call, she said quietly. Would you mind getting me some water? Marcus nodded, puzzled. When he returned, Eleanor was just ending her call. Her posture carried quiet confidence. Thank you, dear. I believe our transportation problem is about to be solved. Moments later, a man in an impeccable suit with an airline executive pin approached. The agent straightened immediately. "Mr. Daniels," she stammered. His demeanor shifted when he saw Eleanor. "Mrs. Winters, I had no idea you were traveling today. Please accept my sincerest apologies." Eleanor's response was gracious but firm. "Hello, Richard. It's been some time. I was just explaining to this young man that our situation would soon be resolved." Daniels turned to Marcus. "Any friend of Mrs. Winters is our highest priority passenger." Eleanor was escorted to first-class boarding, while the trembling agent processed their upgrade. "We had no idea you were conducting an inspection today," Daniels said. "Had you known, it would have defeated the purpose," Eleanor replied. The word landed in Marcus's mind like thunder. Inspection. Who exactly was Eleanor Winters? Owner. Not just a valued customer, but the owner of the airline. Eleanor Winters wasn't just a well-dressed elderly woman who had been overlooked. She was the majority shareholder and founder of Trans-American Airlines, one of the largest carriers in the country. Marcus had spent the day helping her navigate the very company she owned. In the private lounge, Eleanor finally addressed the unspoken question. "You're wondering why I didn't simply identify myself this morning. How can I know what my passengers experience if I announce myself? Once a year, I travel as Eleanor Winters, ordinary passenger, not as E.B. Winters, airline magnate. It's the only way to truly know if we're fulfilling the promise this company was founded on." "And what promise is that?" Marcus asked. "That everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. That's really all it comes down to." She explained how she had been one of the first black female pilots in commercial aviation, yet couldn't get hired by existing airlines in the 1960s. She had started with a small aircraft, offering charter services to black business travelers who faced discrimination, gradually expanding until she built a major airline founded on equitable service. "The irony isn't lost on me," she said. "I built an airline because existing ones wouldn't hire me as a pilot. Now I own one of the largest carriers in the country, and yet, when I walk through my own terminals without announcing myself, I still face the same dismissal I did 50 years ago." "That's why today matters so much," Eleanor continued. "What happened to us represents a fundamental failure of the company I built. It means somewhere along the way the values got lost. The promise got broken," Daniels approached. "Mrs. Winters, your private aircraft is ready." Eleanor turned to Marcus. "Would you do me the honor of accompanying me to Chicago on my company aircraft? I believe we have some unfinished business to discuss." As they boarded the sleek corporate jet, Marcus reflected on the extraordinary series of events that had unfolded from a simple choice to help someone everyone else had overlooked. Eleanor explained that by the time they landed, there would be a full report documenting the discriminatory treatment they experienced. "And I want you there when I address it." When they landed in Chicago, executives were already gathered nervously. The room fell silent as Eleanor entered with Marcus. "Before we begin," Eleanor announced, "I want to introduce Marcus Johnson. He's not an executive or consultant. He's a passenger who experienced our airline today and demonstrated more commitment to our values than many in this room." On screen appeared security footage, transaction records, documentation of each interaction, clear evidence of preferential treatment for white passengers, while Marcus and Eleanor were overlooked. "This is not about individual failures," Eleanor said. "This is about a culture that has developed where it's acceptable to treat certain passengers as less valuable. That stops now." She outlined sweeping reforms, new training programs, revised metrics prioritizing equitable treatment, mystery shopper tests, and overhauled complaint procedures. "These changes begin tomorrow." After the meeting, Eleanor turned to Marcus. "You mentioned you were heading to Chicago for an interview with Callaway Partners, a prestigious opportunity, but I wonder if you might consider an alternative." "What kind of alternative?" Marcus asked. "Trans-American is in need of leadership that understands our founding values. I believe we have an opening for exactly the kind of perspective you demonstrated today." The offer was as unexpected as it was compelling. This wasn't just a job. It was a mission aligned with values Marcus had always held. "That missed flight this morning," Eleanor concluded with quiet certainty, "may have been the most fortunate detour of your career." 1 week later, Marcus stood in the lobby of Trans-American's corporate headquarters in Chicago. The interview at Callaway Partners was now a distant memory, replaced by an opportunity far more aligned with his values. Eleanor guided him into a boardroom where the executive team awaited, including, surprisingly, the managing partner from Callaway who would have interviewed him. "This is Marcus Johnson," Eleanor announced. "He's joining us as our new Vice President of Customer Experience and Operational Integrity." Marcus represents exactly the kind of person who embodies our values. Someone who sees people when others look past them, who maintains his principles even when it costs him, and who understands that business success is hollow if it comes at the expense of human dignity. She added, "These annual incognito inspections are how I ensure we stay true to our founding mission. But 1 week a year isn't enough. We need someone whose daily focus is maintaining the promise this airline was built upon." 6 months later, Marcus walked through Atlanta International Airport, the same terminal where his journey with Eleanor had begun. He now wore the executive pin of Trans-American Airlines. Ahead of him, he noticed an elderly Asian man struggling with his luggage while staff hurried past. Without hesitation, Marcus changed course. "Sir," he said, approaching with a smile, "may I help you with that?" Sometimes the most meaningful changes begin with the simplest acts of seeing those who have been rendered invisible. And sometimes a missed flight leads exactly where you need to be.